everyone!
Hey audience!
It's Water Fairy and Fire Dragon.
And welcome to a new month. Now, first thing you're probably wondering is, where are we? Well, for this particular month we decided
We would not appear on camera except for the last video.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing something a bit different. So, I don't know if any of you are fans of this, but I like quite a few YouTubers who give Pokemon teams to characters from other fictional universes. And I've always thought that was really cool, and I've always wanted to try it. Fairy thought it sounded fun, so I showed her a couple of videos. We made our own thing, so we're going to do this maybe once a year. That's our plan right now. So the rule for picking what we're going to do is we'll pick a universe we've already tackled for the character videos. So as you can tell by looking at the title, we will be tackling the Harry Potter universe first.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be 4 videos about it, as per usual for each month. So the first video, this one, we will talk about the Pokemon trainers. The second video, we will talk about the gym leaders. And the third video, we will talk about the Elite Four, the champion, and whatever the evil team happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth and final video, we will make up a basic plot line for what the game would have been, or what we think it should be anyway. So that's that. So the rules for, at the very least, just this video, with the trainers, everyone gets a team of 6, 1 starter Pokemon, no legendaries, and this one particular rule counts for the entire thing. No repeats on Pokemon. Like, let's say we give someone a Pidgey,
Then somebody else can't have a Pidgeotto or a Pidgeot.
or even another Pidgey.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole line is now unusable because someone else already has it. This rule does not count, though, for region variants. Like, let's say we give someone a Meowth. Someone else can have an Alolan Meowth or Persian. Because different looks, different types. So that's the exception to the rule, but nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And for this particular universe, we added an extra rule because we thought it'd be fun. Every Weasley is going to have an evolution.
Because they're family and they're all from the same family, so why not give them something similar but still different?
And
Because
there's so many of them.
yeah.
We just thought it'd be a fun little thing to add. So we're gonna head right into trainers. So the first, and obviously who will be the player character, Harry Potter. Alright, so the first trainer we will talk about would also function as the protagonist in the potential game, and it would be Dusadai. Now, the major reason we picked this as Harry Potter's starter Pokemon is because it's an owl, and Hedwig, his owl, was very, very important to him.
She was.
So it made a lot of sense, you know. He had an owl who was very important to him. This is a starter Pokemon who looks like an owl, so why not?
And Dusadai is also the most battle-oriented, I guess you could say, of its line. And while that might not pertain to Hedwig per se, that is more like Harry himself.
And various Pokedex entries talk about how quick it is. And how it has good precision. Like its Pokemon Sun Pokedex entry is, it fires arrow quills from its wings with such precision they can pierce a pebble at distances over 100 yards. that kind of makes me think of, you know, Harry and his being a seeker.
Mm-hmm.
He has to have good precision. He has to be able to see his target from a long distance.
So that ties into the Quidditch aspect of his character.
Uh-huh.
So that's Harry's starter Pokemon.
So the next Pokemon Harry has is a Sawsbuck, and we picked the summer variant. So the reason that this is one of his Pokemon is Harry's Patronus is a stag, and Sawsbuck looks like a stag.
Mm-hmm.
And we picked the summer version because Harry was born in the summer.
Yeah. So
There's not really much to it.
no.
You know, the Patronus is a key part of who you are as a person in the Harry Potter universe. You know, it's a reflection of you in some aspect. So he needed a Pokemon that looked like a stag. So Sawsbuck is what we picked.
Yep.
So the next Pokemon is Absol.
Mm-hmm.
So the main reason we picked Absol is their danger sense. They can sense coming calamities. And the connection with Harry is that for most of the series, he could feel Voldemort's moods.
Mm-hmm.
And he could sometimes see visions that warned of danger.
Whether it was early in the beginning when he felt the pain in his scar to it actually becoming actual visions after Voldemort returned.
And even after that, he would still get pain in his scar, and he could tell, oh, Voldemort's really angry, or oh, he's very happy.
So yeah, another important aspect of his character. And Absol actually has a very interesting Pokédex entry for the Sapphire version. It reads, Absol has the ability to foretell the coming of natural disasters. It lives in a harsh, rugged mountain environment. This Pokemon very rarely ventures down from the mountains.
So obviously the last two parts don't really apply, but the natural disaster sensing, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. So Absol just really seemed to fit with the aspect of sensing danger.
So another thing that actually also kind of fits is its Pokedex entries for Fire Red and Leaf Green. It appears when it senses an impending natural disaster. As a result, it was mistaken as a Doombringer. That kind of makes me think about how Harry was treated in Order of the Phoenix. He tried to warn people of the coming danger, but he was made out to be kind of the danger himself.
Because the Ministry and the Prophet did conspire against him.
Yeah, and they threw him under the bus, and he did not have a good time. But that's besides the point, so Absol, for these reasons, we just thought fit.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to the next Pokemon in his lineup, we have Swellow.
So we gave a lot of the Quidditch players a bird Pokemon because it seemed to mix well.
Birds and flight.
So Harry's is a Swellow. So we picked a Swellow mostly because they're smaller size compared with the other regional birds, and its speed fit more of the Seeker qualities that Harry had, because it's even mentioned in the book Seekers are usually smaller.
And because usually when you're smaller, you can be faster, and Harry, in this case, has to be fast because the snitch is extremely quick, and you have to be fast to catch it.
So, a good Pokedex entry that I think matches both Harry and obviously Swellow is its entries for Pokemon Black, White, and Black 2 and White 2 are: it circles the sky in search of prey, when it spots one, it dives steeply to catch the prey. Harry does that quite a bit. He stays up high in the air and just sits there and watches. And then when he sees the snitch, he goes for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, his fifth Pokemon
is a Dragonite.
Yeah. So we picked this line because its first two stages kind of look like snakes, and Harry does have that link with Voldemort. But we eventually chose to go with Dragonite instead of the other two.
Because of its protective characteristics that are often mentioned in some of its Pokédex entries. For example, for its Ultramoon entry, it says you'll often hear tales of this kind-hearted Pokemon rescuing people or Pokemon that are drowning. Now,
well, Harry's accused multiple times of having a hero complex.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to save people. Now, whether you agree with that or not, the fact that he very much does want to save people, I think, is enough.
Mm-hmm. And Harry is very protective of his friends, too, so... just that alone, too.
Yep. So, and now on to his final Pokemon. So, for his final one, we picked Mimikyu.
Now, well, you're probably wondering why Mimikyu.
Well, a lot of its entries talk about it being alone and desperately wanting, friends and all that stuff, and how it tries to emulate Pikachu so it can get people to like it. And it really just made us think about Harry's childhood.
Harry was very, very lonely. The Dursleys locked him in a cupboard.
Yeah, that was his room. He wasn't really loved, and he wanted love, and he wanted affection and to have people care about him.
And he wanted friends, and he didn't have that either.
Exactly. So it just Mimikyu seemed like a good fit because it's a Pokemon, his younger self could really relate to.
In fact, its Pokédex entry for Pokemon Moon actually is very relatable to Harry's character. A lonely Pokemon, it conceals its terrifying appearance beneath an old rag so it can get closer to people and other Pokemon. Now, Harry definitely, I'm sure, tried whenever he could, but he never really got that opportunity because he was so isolated.
So, that's Harry Potter's team. Dusadai, Sawsbuck, Absol, Swallow, Dragonite, and Mimikyu.
Mm-hmm.
So now moving on to our next trainer. Hermione Granger.
Mm-hmm.
So her starter Pokemon is a Duat. So the first reason we picked Duat is because her Patronus is an otter.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a Pokemon that looks like an otter. It makes sense.
Yeah. The other reason is because Duat has a lot of strict training, and that's actually emphasized in all of its Pokédex entries.
Hermione is very strict with her studies. We thought it matched.
It's actually emphasized in a majority of its Pokédex entries that we found. For example, its Pokédex entry for Black 2 and White 2 says, as a result of strict training, each Duat learns different forms for using the Scout Chops. So that just sounded a lot like Hermione to us because she's very strict with her studies, as Dragon said, and she is gifted in multiple things, so it just seemed very Hermione.
Yeah, it seemed like a very Hermione Pokemon. Okay, so the next Pokemon that we gave her is an Alakazam. So the main reason we picked Alakazam is because of how smart it is.
And again, smart, just something you associate.
That's a defining trait of Hermione. She's very smart.
In fact, Alakazam's Pokédex entry for Red and Blue says that its brain can outperform a supercomputer and that its intelligence quotient is said to be a 5,000. So again, a very, very intelligent Pokemon.
Yeah, and as I already said, smartness is one of Hermione Granger's defining traits. Her next Pokemon is a Metagross. This is again a reference to her smartness because Metagross has like 4 brains.
Yep. For its Emerald Pokédex entry, it reads, Metagross has 4 brains that are joined by a complex neural network. As a result of the integration, this Pokemon is smarter than a supercomputer. So, again, just a tribute to how smart Hermione is.
So, yep. So her next Pokemon is a Lapras.
So Lapras is a little bit different from her previous 2 Pokemon. This time, Lapras is a water and ice Pokemon, whereas her last 2 were psychic Pokemon.
Well, psychic Pokemon are usually associated with smartness. So we chose Lapras for a couple of reasons.
Lapras is also said to be a highly intelligent Pokemon. In fact, for its Sun entry, it says that its high intelligence enables it to comprehend human speech, and when in a good mood, it sings in its beautiful voice.
So it's another highly intelligent Pokemon that matches with Hermione once again. So the next Pokemon we gave her was the Alolan Meowth. This is mostly a reference to Crookshanks,
Hermione's cat. Now, Alolan Meowth is said to be very impulsive, selfish, and fickle. According to its Pokédex entry for Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, it's highly intelligent and prideful. It's famously difficult to handle, but that's also a reason for its popularity.
So that just kind of seems to match Crookshanks.
And Hermione. Hermione's very prideful, too.
She really is.
So for her last Pokemon, we have
Miss Magius. You know, Miss Magius kind of looks like the traditional witch, and, you know, Hermione is a witch. So that was the starting reason for it.
Yes. And now a lot of its Pokédex entries talk about its cries, but I'll be using the one from Black and White. It says its cry sounds like incantation. It is said that the cry may rarely be imbued with happiness-giving powers. Now, again, incantations, witchcraft.
And Hermione's usually the one who gets the spells right, so we figured it fit.
So that's Hermione's line.
So our third trainer is Ron Weasley.
And Ron's starter Pokemon is Charmeleon.
So this is mostly in reference to his anger issues, I guess. He's, like, especially in, like, the last book, he's so easy to anger.
And you can't blame all of that on the locket.
No, the locket just expands on what's there, and, like, even before that, he's very quick to anger in the other books as well.
And Charmeleon is a very hot-headed Pokemon, which...
And Ron's a hothead.
In fact, Charmeleon's Pokédex entry for Gold says it's very hot-headed by nature, so it constantly seeks opponents. It calms down when it wins.
So yeah. So we're very aware that this is not Ron's defining trait, but it is something that does get him into trouble very prominently in the last book, so we thought it bared some reference.
Mm-hmm.
His next Pokemon is his evolution, and as we said earlier, every Weasley child is going to have an evolution.
Mm-hmm.
His is Leafeon.
Now you're probably wondering why Leafeon. So, the reason I thought Leafeon would work is because of something very interesting that came from its Pokédex entry from Ultra Sun. Although it doesn't like disputes, it will sharpen the leaf on its tail into a blade and fight if it has to protect its friends.
Ron is naturally very protective. A lot of the times when we see him get very angry or defensive, it's in defense of someone else, like when he tried to curse Malfoy when he called Hermione a mudblood.
Mm-hmm.
He's very protective of the people he cares about.
He is.
His next Pokemon is a Pyroar. Now, the main reason we chose this was because one Gryffindor needed a Pyroar. Their insignia is a lion.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're going to go with a male Pyroar because, it's a male lion with the mane.
Mm-hmm. And another... So, Pyroar's Pokédex entry that really, I think, helped us choose this for Ron came from Ultra Sun. The males are usually lazy, but when attacked by a strong foe, a male will protect its friends with no regards for its own safety.
So again, similar reasons to Leafeon, very protective of his friends and willing to fight for them.
Because Ron will jump right into things. If one of his friends are threatened, he won't even think about himself.
So Ron's next Pokemon is Herdier.
Mm-hmm. Now, Herdier is a dog Pokemon, and, well, it's not the same type of dog. Ron's Patronus is
the Jack Russell Terrier. We think that they look similar enough, and we just thought Herdier just seemed like such a Ron Pokemon.
Mm-hmm. And Herdier's Pokédex entry for Pokemon Moon says that this Pokemon obeys its master's orders faithfully, however it refuses to listen to anything said by a person it doesn't respect.
So again, Ron, he'll listen to the people he likes, but if he doesn't like you, he's not very inclined to listen to what you're saying.
No.
So that kind of matches.
So yeah, ignoring everything Malfoy says.
Pretty much. So, the next Pokemon he has is a Bisharp.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is mostly in reference to his chess skills.
Because if you watched the first movie and read the first book, you know that he was the one taking charge during the wizard chess puzzle.
Yeah, so chess is kind of his thing.
Something that did set him apart from his siblings, too.
Uh-huh.
Because if you know Ron, you know that's his biggest insecurity. He wants to stand out from his brothers.
Of which he has many.
Mm-hmm. Now, according to Bisharp's Pokédex entry for Black 2 and White 2, this pitiless Pokemon commands a group of Pawniard to hound prey into immobility. It then moves in to finish the prey off. So,
this is mostly in reference in Chess Matters, Ron's in charge. We see that in the first book and movie when he plays the chess game and everyone else listens. And Ron's last Pokemon is a Pidgeotto. So we said it before. The Quidditch players, we're gonna give most of them bird Pokemon because flying matches.
And Ron was on the Gryffindor Quidditch team. He was a keeper.
Yeah, he had no confidence, which caused them endless trouble, but what you gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
So now the reason we picked Pidgeotto.
Now, according to Pidgeotto's Pokédex entry for Stadium 2, it says it has outstanding vision. However, it flies high. It's able to distinguish the movements of prey. So, again, in the regards to the aspect of Quidditch players, more specifically the keeper, that is kind of what they do. They have to distinguish the moves of the enemy team and keep them from making goals. So now we move on to our next trainer, and that would be Ginny Weasley. Ron's younger sister.
And Harry's love interest.
Mm-hmm.
So her starter Pokemon is Blaziken.
Mm-hmm. One particularly interesting thing about Ginny is how her character development progresses, because in the beginning she's just Ron's kid sister who's kind of like a Harry Potter fangirl. She's like always trying to follow him around and everything. But as time goes on, she does become her own person, and she's a whole lot stronger than a lot of people would have expected. And for Blaziken's entry for Omega Ruby, in battle Blaziken blows out intense flames from its wrist and attacks foes courageously. The stronger the foe, the more intensely this Pokemon's wrist burns. So
we thought that matched with Ginny later in the series.
Mm-hmm. So that's her starter. For her evolution, Ginny has a Jolteon.
Yeah. So, out of all the remaining evolutions, we picked this one for a couple of reasons. Mostly, it's like, it looks ferocious.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't want to give Ginny one of the cuter ones or one of the more ladylike ones, for lack of a better term, because that's not really how the series depicts her.
No.
Like, Harry, he starts liking her when she becomes more badass. So, we wanted a more badass-looking evolution.
Mm-hmm. And Jolteon's Pokédex entry for Yellow, it says it's a sensitive Pokemon that easily becomes sad or angry. Every time its mood changes, it charges power. So, and based on what we've read and how Ginny is as a character, you don't really know what she can be capable of later on, so I don't think she's someone you'd want to piss off.
No.
So that's her evolution.
Her next Pokemon is a Ponyta. Now, the main reason we picked Ponyta was we needed a horse, because that's Ginny's Patronus, and as we've mentioned multiple times now, a Patronus in Harry Potter is very important to who you are.
Mm-hmm. Now, according to Ponyta's entry for Pokemon Emerald, a Ponyta is very weak at birth. It can barely stand up. Its legs become stronger as it stumbles and falls while trying to keep up with its parents.
We saw a correlation between that and Ginny growing into her own person.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what she does. At first, she's just Ron's little sister who annoys him. Then she's a member of the DA, and then she's just Ginny. Her next Pokemon is Staraptor. Now Ginny, she very much needed a bird Pokemon because Quidditch was much more important to her than to anyone else because she even made it into her career after school.
Mm-hmm.
So she very much needed a bird Pokemon. So Staraptor, well, one reason we picked it was it's one of the more powerful, badass regional birds, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. According to Staraptor's Pokédex entry for Pokemon Diamond, it has a savage nature. It will courageously challenge foes that are much larger. And Ginny's not quick to let anybody piss her off. In fact, in the 6th book, that's actually how she caught Horace Slughorn's attention. Basically, Zachariah Smith pissed her off on the train, so
she sent a hex at him, and the hex impressed Slughorn, so he invited her to lunch.
Yep.
And her next Pokemon is a Joltik.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's no real big reasoning behind this one. It just made me think of her Pygmy Puff Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
Because it can ride around her shoulder, and it looks fuzzy. I didn't have a deep reason for picking this one.
But according to Joltik's Pokédex entry for Pokemon White, they attach themselves to large-bodied Pokemon and absorb static electricity, which they store in an electric pouch.
So, Ginny's last Pokemon is a Seadra.
Now, the Seadra, according to its Pokédex entry for Pokemon Stadium, is a clever Pokemon that can swim backwards while facing forward. Fainting may result from a jab of its sharp spike.
It just seemed like a tough Pokemon Ginny would like. It evolves from Horsey, who is cute and adorable,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes more.
Just like her.
And that is Ginny's entire character. She starts out as Ron's annoying little sister who happens to be a Harry Potter fangirl, and she's not very involved in the plot for a while. She's just pretty much the same as that. And then she starts growing into her own person, who is a very enthusiastic member of the DA, a very good Quidditch player, and she just keeps growing, so that's pretty much the sum of her character.
Mm-hmm. So that's all of Ginny's Pokemon.
So our next trainer is Fred Weasley. Fred's first Pokemon and his starter Pokemon is Typhlosion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we picked Typhlosion for a couple of reasons.
According to Typhlosion's Pokédex entry for Emerald, it can hide behind a shimmering heat haze that it creates using intense flames. Typhlosion creates blazing explosive blasts that burn everything into cinders. Now, when I think of Fred and George, I do associate explosions with them.
Yeah, they like making things blow up.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how they leave Hogwarts.
They end with a bang. And a brilliant display of fireworks.
Mm-hmm. So and he's definitely more fiery of the two of them.
Yes, he is definitely the fire twin.
So, Fred's evolution is Umbreon.
According to Umbreon's Pokédex entry for Ruby and Sapphire, Umbreon evolved as a result of exposure to the moon's waves. It hides silently in darkness and waits for its foes to make a move. The rings on its body glow when it leaps out to attack. Now, Fred and George, you don't really expect them to attack, and they can be quite sneaky. And Fred definitely is the more extreme of the two twins, so it seemed pretty fitting for him.
So Fred's next Pokemon is a Zoroark. So we knew we wanted this line because they're very devious and mischievous, and that just really fits the twins as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And according to its Pokédex entry for Pokemon Y, but bonds between these Pokemon are very strong. It protects the safety of its pack by tricking its opponents. So, again, you have the trickster aspect in there. And Fred is very protective of his family as well.
And he's good with kids. Like, you see it a couple of times. Like, them comforting the younger students in Order of the Phoenix. When Umbridge is literally torturing them.
Mm-hmm. Which is very cute to watch, too.
Yeah.
If you watch the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, his next Pokemon is
Duskull.
Now, according to Duskull's Pokedex entry for Pokemon Platinum, it loves the crying of children. It startles bad kids by passing through walls and making them cry. Now, this we chose mainly because we found it very ironic.
Yeah, because, like, this seems like the kind of thing their mother would have said to them. Behave or the Duskull will come get you.
Mm-hmm. But
I think we just thought it'd be really funny if one of the twins happened to have a Duskull.
So yeah, Fred has a Duskull. We still think it's funny.
So, Fred's next Pokemon is a Pangoro.
Mm-hmm. Now, according to Pangoro's Pokedex entry for X, although it possesses a violent temperament, it won't put up with bullying. It uses the leaf in its mouth to sense the movement of its enemies. And as we just said earlier, Fred will not put up with bullying, as again, very protective of his family, so very protective from people like Lucius Malfoy, who have badmouthed his family in the past, and very protective of the younger students.
And we've already discussed his role with helping them in Order of the Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred's final Pokemon is an Apom.
Mm-hmm. Now, according to Apon's Pokédex entry for Fire Red, it lives atop tall trees. When leaping from branch to branch, it definitely uses its tail for balance, and that just really shows Apon as a very clever Pokemon. And again, Fred, like George, is a trickster, and while academically they're not the best, they are very clever when it comes to their pranks.
Exactly. And Apom as a monkey, those are typically depicted as mischievous and playful, and that does match the twins rather well.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to our next trainer, his twin brother, George Weasley.
His starter Pokemon is a Totodile.
Mm-hmm. And according to Totodile's Pokedex entry for Pokemon Emerald, despite its small body, Totodile's jaws are very powerful. While it may think it's just playfully nipping, its bite has enough strength to cause serious injury.
So basically, Totodile are very, very playful, which matches Fred and George.
Mm-hmm. They just don't...
And Fred is... well, actually no. And George is commonly seen as the nicer one, so...
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So George's evolution is a Espeon. So part of the reason we picked that was because Espeon and Umbreon, they could in a way be considered twins themselves, because they were the second generation of evolutions that were displayed. and they came in as a twosome together.
Mhm. Now, according to Espeon's Emerald Pokedex entry, an Espeon is extremely loyal to any trainer it considers to be worthy. It is said to have developed precognitive powers to protect its trainer from harm. Now, George is definitely extremely loyal to Fred because Fred is his twin, and they're practically inseparable. And like Fred, he also has this protectiveness over his family, the Weasleys. So it just seemed like a fitting choice for George's evolution.
Yep. So George's next Pokemon is an Alolan Ninetales.
According to Pokemon Ultra Sun's Pokédex entry on the Alolan Ninetales, the reason it guides people all the way down the mountain's base is that it wants them to hurry and leave.
But it's also nice enough to help them down. If it really wanted them gone, it could always just freeze them solid and be done with it.
And again, George is definitely the nicer of the twins, so...
Yep. So George's fourth Pokemon is a Haunter.
Now, according to Pokemon Crystal Pokédex entry for Haunter, it hides in the dark, planning to take the life of the next living thing that wanders close by. And so, Haunter is kind of a lurker, and Haunter is very mischievous, so again...
Especially that one that we saw in the Pokemon anime that Ash befriended and eventually left with Serena. He liked to play pranks.
Yes. So, it just seemed very appropriate given the trickster aspect of George.
So that leads us to his fifth Pokemon, which is Beartic. We mostly picked Beartic for the aesthetics, not really the Pokedex entries. We just thought that, well, it looks like he has a beard, and we thought George might find that funny. And, well, George was a beater, and that requires you to be, usually big and imposing. The twins really weren't, but that's the typical build.
And, I mean, if Fred had a bear, then...
Why not George?
Considering they're twins.
Yeah, so George's last Pokemon is a Mankey.
Now, according to Mankey's Pokedex entry for Pokemon Crystal, it lives in groups in the treetops. If it loses sight of the group, it becomes infuriated by its loneliness.
So, well, George, he's very group-oriented, and he is, like Ron and Fred, kind of quick to anger. So, it just seemed to fit.
And it's hard to imagine George without Fred.
So again, always in a group setting. So, yep, so that is the last of George's Pokemon. Our next trainer is Neville Longbottom. So his starter Pokemon is a Meganium. So it's Neville. He's very into plants and herbology, so we needed to pick grass types for him. That was just a given. And Meganium has flower petals growing out of its neck. It seems appropriate to me.
According to Meganium's Pokedex entry for Ruby and Sapphire, the fragrance of Meganium's flowers soothe and calm emotions. In battle, this Pokemon gives off more of its becoming scent to blunt the foe's fighting spirit. Now, Neville, he can fight and duel if he needs to, but he's not the type to just jump into a fight.
It's not his first choice. He'll do it if it's necessary, but if it's not necessary, it's not really his first, what he'd like to do first.
So a Pokemon who calms emotions and blunts a foe's fighting spirit seemed like something Neville would have in his arsenal.
Yep.
Now his next Pokemon is
a Florges, and we picked the yellow Florges because yellow is one of Gryffindor's colors.
And it's also one of Hufflepuff's main colors, and
Neville wanted to be in Hufflepuff.
he thought he should have been a Hufflepuff. Which he has the characteristics of Hufflepuffs
their
as well.
loyalty and all that stuff, but
But
he got Gryffindor, so we thought the yellow Florges would be a good nod to both.
According to its Pokemon X Pokedex industry, it claims exquisite flower garden as its territory, and it tames power from basking the energy emitted by flowering plants. And
sorry.
bless you. And Neville, again, he's not the most confident character, but he does draw strength from his friends.
And again, flower motif.
He's
very into plants.
So moving on, his next Pokemon is...
His next Pokemon is a Shiftry.
Now, Shiftry is a Pokemon that has, according to its Fire Red and Leaf Green Pokedex entry, is feared as a Forest Guardian, and it can read the foe's mind and take preemptive action.
So, again, keeping with the plant motif, we needed another grass type, and Shiftry is, it just seems badass, and Neville certainly grows into that, because Shiftry starts out as a Seedot, which is basically just an acorn, and he becomes this forest guardian, so it seemed
appropriate.
Yeah.
His next Pokemon is a Gloom.
Yep. So, and again, as we will say with every other entry on this list, grass type, because Neville likes plants.
According to Gloom's Pokedex entry for Pokemon Emerald, a horribly noxious honey drools from its mouth. One whiff of the honey can result in memory loss. Some fans are said to enjoy the overwhelming stink, however. Now, Neville, given all the strange plants that he does love, I don't think he would be bothered by a Gloom scent.
He'd probably be fascinated by the properties of its drool.
So, again, it seemed quite appropriate. And for his fifth Pokemon, we
did a Tropius.
Now, this one was more for the aesthetics, because, again, it is a plant Pokemon, so we had to give Neville a plant Pokemon, but it also looks very tough, even though its Pokédex entries just kept talking about the fruit around its neck.
Well, yeah, but that would also fascinate Neville, because you can pick it and eat it.
That is true, actually.
Like, in the anime, I think it's like, well, it looks like a banana, but when you peel it, it's red.
It's red?
I think that's what the anime had in this one episode.
Well, all of its Pokédex entries did say that children loved eating its fruit, so Dragon is right on that end.
Yep.
Something that would interest Neville very much.
And, we can't just stick with flowers and stuff with Neville. We need to branch out a bit.
So for his final Pokemon, we chose Rosalia. Now, according to Rosalia's black and white Pokédex entry, the more healthier the Rosalia, the more pleasant its flower's aroma, and its scent deeply relaxes people.
So that's kind of twofold with Neville. One, I think he'd be fascinated with how the scent can relax people, and two, it talks about how you have to take care of the Roselia to do that, and that seems like something Neville would be ecstatic to try.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's all of Neville's Pokemon. And of course, as we have emphasized many times, yes, they're all grass.
Yep. So we're happy with that list.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got 2 more trainers to go. Our next one is Luna Lovegood.
So for Luna's starter Pokemon, we have an Ivysaur.
So just a heads up for this list, we mostly picked it for aesthetics, not so much for what the Pokemon personalities are, because Luna's weird.
Mm-hmm.
She's a fun weird, but weird all the same.
Like, according to Ivysaur's Pokedex entry for Ruby and Sapphire, there is a bud on this Pokemon's back. To support its weight, Ivysaur's legs and trunk grow thick and strong. If it starts spending much time lying in the sunlight, it's a sign that the bud will bloom into a larger flower soon. Now, just knowing that about Ivysaur, I think that's something that would definitely fascinate Luna right off the bat, because it's unusual, and if there's one thing we know about Luna, is that it's that she spends all her time talking about all these strange creatures that
may or may not actually exist.
So, we thought that was appropriate.
Yep. So her next Pokemon is a Diggersby. Now, her Patronus is a hare. And as we've said multiple times now, the Patronus is important. So we needed some kind of rabbit Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked Diggersby because it's just really odd, and that's just up Luna's alley. Odd.
I mean, even its personality, like according to its Alpha Sapphire Pokedex entry, as powerful as an excavator, its ears can reduce dense bedrock to rubble. When it's finished digging, though, it lounges lazily.
So yeah, so it's an odd rabbit. It looks odd, it acts odd, and we thought that Luna would like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the next Pokemon is Xatu, and we mostly picked it because of its blank look.
Mm-hmm. And
not much digging needed.
No. In fact, according to Xatu's Alpha Sapphire Pokédex entry, Xatu is known to stand motionless while staring at the sun all day long. Some people revere it as a mystical Pokemon out of their belief that Xatu is in possession of the power to see the future. So, again, something that I think would just really fascinate Luna.
Yeah.
So for her 4th Pokemon, we chose
Mawile.
Mm-hmm.
No, Mawile, we also thought aesthetically would please Luna, because it's so out there in appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just so out there in appearance, and it's based off of a Japanese folklore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a scary one, and we just thought Luna would be into it.
And according to its Ultra Sun Pokedex entry, a cunning and terrifying Pokemon, its cuteness makes opponents let its guard down, and then it swallows them whole with its huge jaws. So,
and Luna's pretty unassuming herself.
She is. Because she's usually very kind, or usually if you don't really know her that well, she's just very quiet, and she's always just staring off somewhere with this dreamy expression on her face.
Which actually leads us to her next Pokemon, Swablu. We mostly picked it because its wings are made of clouds, and Luna's head is usually in the clouds.
Mm-hmm. Swablu, according to the Pokemon Ruby Pokedex entry, has light and fluffy wings that are like cottony clouds. This Pokemon is not frightened of people. It lands on the heads of people and sits there like a cotton fluff hat.
So yeah, so I can see Luna walking around with it on her head.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I can totally see her doing.
So for her final Pokemon, we chose Clefable.
Because, you know, it's depicted as, like, from the moon, and Luna would be ecstatic about that.
Mm-hmm. According to its Pokemon Crystal Pokedex entry, said to live in quiet, remote mountains, this type of fairy has a strong aversion to being seen. So that's also a tribute to the fact that she talks about all these creatures, but no one's ever seen them. She's never even seen them herself half the time.
More than half the time.
Well, yeah, more, like...
All the time.
Yeah. It's like, has anyone seen a Nargle? Nope. So that's pretty much Luna's Pokemon.
Now we're on our last Pokemon trainer, Draco Malfoy, and he would also function as the rival character. Draco's starter is a superior. So we picked this Pokemon for a couple of reasons. The first is, as the name implies, it can be a pretty haughty Pokemon, and Draco's pretty haughty himself. The second is it looks like a snake, and Draco has a bit of a snake motif to him because he's part of Slytherin, and that's their insignia. And another reason is he's heavily associated with the Death Eaters because his father's one, he becomes one, his aunt's one, it's a whole thing. And they're heavily involved with snakes because Voldemort likes them a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. In fact, according to Superior's Pokédex entry for Pokemon Black 2 and Pokemon White 2, it only gives its all against strong opponents who are not fazed by the glare of Superior's noble eyes. And this just seems like a very Draco thing, because
he prefers to, you know, brag and boast than to actually fight.
Mm-hmm. So for his next Pokemon,
we picked a Jangmo-o. So he needed a couple of dragon Pokemon because Draco's name means dragon.
Mm-hmm.
So we couldn't pass that up.
So according to Jangmo-o's Pokedex entry for Pokemon Ultra Moon, it will never show its back in battle. Ancient warriors like Jangmo-o for its valiant disposition and made it one of their own. And Draco...
This is kind of a reference to he's good deep, deep down.
Mm-hmm. Very deep down. So for his next Pokemon, we went with Garchomp.
We needed another dragon.
Mm-hmm. According to the Pokédex entry on Garchomp from Pokemon Moon, the protuberances on its head serve as sensors. It can even detect distant prey. Now, Draco did serve as a seeker for the Slytherin Quidditch team. And while he wasn't the best, part of being a seeker is finding the snitch. So, as we said previously, we had to give him a few dragon Pokemon considering his name. So, another reason to choose Garchomp.
Yep. Draco's next Pokemon is a Glalie.
Now, Glalie, according to its entry for Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, protects itself. It clads its body in an armor of ice made by freezing moisture in the air. And this is a reference to later, older Draco, because he does start to deteriorate and he becomes easily frightened, and he's very terrified for his own well-being, and it seems like while he's got this job to do, he's worried about his protecting himself as well.
So this clearly seems like a good fit because its Pokedex entries are about it protecting itself, and it's got that skull motif, which is another Death Eater thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Draco seems like he'd like ice types.
He does.
That's just my opinion. His next Pokemon is a Honchkrow. And we mostly picked that again because of aesthetics. It looks all noble-ish.
Mm-hmm. According to its Pokedex entry for Ultra Sun, though, it will absolutely not forgive failure from or betrayal by its goons. It has no choice in this if it wants to maintain the order of the flock. Now, Draco has his cronies.
Yeah, he has his own goons, and he likes to maintain his stance above them.
So we thought that was very fitting.
Yep.
So moving on to Draco's last Pokemon.
A Crobat. So this is a common Pokemon given to your rivals in the games because it's a good indicator of how they changed. Because to get a Crobat, your Golbat has to love you.
Mm-hmm.
It will not evolve otherwise. You have to treat it well, and it has to love you for it. So we liked that aspect, and we wanted to continue it, because, again, it does show that Draco, for all of his boasting and all of his haughtiness, and as much as a not nice person he is, he's very, very loyal and loving to his family.
Mm-hmm. So that pretty much wraps up Draco, and
by extension, this video.
So those are our trainers.
Yep. So our next video, as a reminder from the beginning of the video, will be about who the gym leaders are.
Mm-hmm.
So keep your eyes open for that one. Hopefully it will be up soon.
And we will see you guys in that video.
So if you have a moment, give us a subscribe, like our video. If you have any comments, we'd love to hear from you.
And we have various social media set up, so you can follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. It should be easy to find. It's the same as the channel name, Fire Dragon and Water Fairy. So thank you for watching, and
we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.